Welcome back, everybody, to the Almost Sideways Sideshow. This is episode 7 of our deep dive of Band of Brothers, The Breaking Point. I am your host, Terry Plucknett. Joining me is Adam Daly. Adam, how's it going?
No funny lines of dialogue, no scissor jokes this time, but I'm nearing my breaking point. No, just kidding. This is going to be this is an interesting episode considering this is one of your highlights. So I'm really excited to talk about this one.
Yeah, I would say this is probably my favorite episode. So nice, it's going to be fun to get into this one. All right, so right now this is episode 7. We have a few left. Have you been enjoying your Band of Brothers journey?
Oh, definitely a lot more. This last set of recordings, we record these instead of 4. So, but these last couple episodes have been, especially Bastogne. As of now, Bastogne. Before we start talking about it, whenever we start talking about stuff, I always kind of like things a little bit more after we have more in-depth conversations of it. But Bastogne, so far, is my current favorite. Before we started talking about the breaking point, so it's definitely on an upward trajectory of the show. The last couple episodes have been really pristine. So.
All right. Well, yeah, we're going to be talking about episode 7, The Breaking Point, and looking a lot at Sergeant Lipton, who is the main focal point of this episode. Yes, Donnie Wahlberg finally gets his moment in the sun here.
Make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe here on YouTube, where we talk all things movies and Band of Brothers, our sideshow. But make sure you join the conversation in the comments section down below, because that's where you're at. Almost Sideways, a place for movie conversation.
There you go. YouTube stuff. Good deal. Good deal. All right. Well, let's get into episode 7 as we look at the study of Lipton. And like I said, this is one of my favorite episodes, possibly my favorite episode. And one of the main reasons is there is a lot that happens in this episode, and a lot of really major important stuff. Like I know episode 5 is called The Crossroads. This is really, in so many ways, the crossroads for Easy Company. Not only it's a crossroads in leadership, it's a crossroads in who's moving on with the group, because there are a lot of characters who get injured, who die. It's been a little while since major characters that we've known since the beginning die, and this happens or end up getting taken out. This happens quite a bit in this episode, and it is just packed full of stuff. So let's get into this. The first thing you notice about this episode that's different than any other episode, I don't know if you realize this. This is the first episode where we have constant voiceover and a constant narration throughout the entire thing.
Constantly. Yeah.
Yeah, there have been moments where Winters has said some things and narrated some things. Lipton narrates this entire episode. And I find that interesting because we mentioned on the last episode, and this one you see it even more, Lipton really is emerging as the leader of Easy Company, and it's even said at the end, and he doesn't even realize he's the leader, but he's the leader of Easy Company. And so it's good that this very traumatic moment in Easy Company's time together is narrated by the one that's leading them through this moment, because it's obviously not Lieutenant Dyke. And we see Lieutenant Dyke at his finest in this episode. So anyways, I'm sure we'll get to Dyke, but first I want to start talking about the tragedy of this episode, and because there are so many tragedies, and it starts right off the bat when you have Hubler shooting the German horseback rider, and he finally finds a Luger, and Hubler's the one. There's a couple guys in Easy Company that have been looking for a Luger. Hubler's the one that it was before D-Day, before they were getting ready to jump, he ran into the British soldier and almost stole the Luger from him because he thought it was so cool after he looked at it. It's like, oh, I always wanted one of these. Well, he finally gets his Luger, and it misfires and shoots him in the leg, and he bleeds out right there on the battlefield. from having a gun down his pants. I mean, how senseless of a death is that? But that's what happened to Hoobler. So you have Hoobler go down. You have once the barrage starts happening as they're overlooking Foy and they're in their foxholes and they're holding the line. By the way, those barrage sequences are just breathtaking sequences, and there are 3 rounds of barrages of firing that they have to deal with, and each one has different consequences. Your first one, you have Lipton is running around like crazy, telling everyone to get into their foxholes because
Get in your holes. Get in your holes.
Yep. And it's the one that he says reminded him of the 4th of July, and he was actually enjoying it. But when it's all done, we find out that Joe Toy got hit and lost a leg. You know, the guy who just came back
returned.
From the front.
He just came back.
He just came back to the front after getting hit in the shoulder, and so he's one of the first guys you meet in the show, and here he is sitting next to his leg, and it's just this heartbreaking moment, and then Garnier goes out to go get him, and who's not in great shape either because he's one of the guys who escaped the hospital before he should have, and he goes out to get him and tries to bring him back, and in the second barrage, Garnier gets hit. And his leg gets blown to pieces. I mean, it's still there, but I think eventually, knowing the story, I think he ends up without a leg. Gotta feel for Buck in that moment. Buck, who we talked about before, came back from getting injured and was just different. He just, there was something different about him. In fact, Babe Heffron even said he felt like this one guy he knew from back home called Crazy Joe McCluskey. And just that guy who just something's off about him, and just there's something off about Buck. And then he sees his 2 best friends, Joe Toy and Garnier, lying there, and the look on his face as he's watching them. It's a moment that's in the credits, the opening credits of the show. And now that you know the context of that moment, I mean, it breaks my heart to watch credits and see that moment every time. So you have that. Then let's see here. Then you have the third barrage come through, and that's when Luz is kind of stuck in the middle, and Muck and Pinkala are calling him over, and their foxhole gets blown apart and hit 2 of his best friends, and then he ends up in a foxhole with Lipton. The shell lands in their in their foxhole, but it doesn't explode. And that it's that moment where Lipton takes a cigarette because he's never had one. So I mean, there's
smoke. I don't.
Yeah, there's death. There's death all over this episode, even to the point that you get this moment, and it's much more subtle than this. But at the end of it, Lipton just kind of goes, "Let's recap here. This guy's dead, and this guy's dead, and this guy's dead," because you just got to go through it. Because in this one episode, so many guys that you've known since the beginning are either losing a limb or gone. It's just crazy. And that's like enough for one episode of this, right? We've been talking about what happens in these episodes, but not this one. That's barely half of what happens in this episode.
Yeah. I before we transition to what else happens, I felt a lot of this episode, of course. Joe coming back probably before he shit, and his first thing he says, "Who took a shit in my foxhole? What the hell?" And it gives a moment of levity there. But the him going down and seeing his leg, and he's crawling back on his arms, crawling back to get into a hole, and he's like, "I can't get up, I can't get up, I can't get up." And then what was the soldier that ran over to him again? You said his name was Garnier. Garnier comes over and tries to pick him up and helps him out, but then something goes off, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, this guy, just like, I like that guy. I like Joe because he busts out that was the guy that busts out the brass
knuckles,
and, Day of Days, and it's like you see this guy's progression. He's been there. I mean, he's might have missed an episode before, but he's been there for the majority of the show, and it's sad to see him go for sure. One of my favorites, kind of like the guy character we haven't really talked about. I haven't really talked about, but I've always liked when he's on camera. Just something about him that kind of comes across as this guy that can't help but can't say anything bad about it anyway in the show. But sad to see him go, and then seeing Buck Compton, what he's going through, and knowing that he's not the same guy anymore, and he was another one that we talked about, one of our favorite guys too, and then he's just kind of a shell of who he was before too, and it's just he's not the guy joking around playing darts. He's distraught. He's losing his buddies, and it's taking a toll on him as well. He kind of he doesn't snap himself out like we saw Doc Rowe do in the previous episode. He kind of goes, does his thing there too. So you definitely see a lot of moving parts in a very traumatic scenes, and those big explosions through the bushes and the trees and the foxholes are some of the probably best shot stuff, because you feel like you're in those foxholes, feeling the rain of a tree and dirt fall on you too. You feel that in those episodes. I think that the cinematography was great for those moments too. It kind of makes you feel like you're actually there.
Yeah.
Especially if you have a good sound system. I have a subwoofer right underneath my bed too. So I felt like when every sound that shell hit, like you can feel it. So it's like, oh my goodness, like I could only imagine what it's there. Like what I could not imagine what it would have been like.
Yeah, I watched this group of episodes on my iPad with headphones in, and I mean iPad you get the picture is what it is, but the sound you get off of having headphones in and hearing all the nuances of the sound was really, really cool. Yeah, you mentioned Buck Compton, and he ends up getting pulled off the line because of emotional distress. Really, he can't do it anymore. He can't handle it anymore. He's not injured, and he was this guy who from the very beginning. And part of it is the fact that it's Neil McDonough, but part of it is just that character. He felt invincible, and when he gets hit that first time, you could tell he feels broken, and as soon as he comes back, you can tell he's broken, and then you have this broken guy, and he sees his friends lying there just in pieces, literally, and he just can't handle it anymore.
Yeah.
You mentioned Joe Toy as that guy who you always can connect to when he's out there. For me, that's Garnier. And so, yeah, Joe Toy, it was heartbreaking to see, but then you see Garnier, who's a guy who I feel like you have to notice him whenever he's on camera, right? He's the one that his brother died right before he jumped. He's the one that accused Winters of being a Quaker, and I mean, he's right in the middle of so much of this stuff. Always there with a wisecrack, always there to give people a hard time, and he even has a wisecrack as it all happens. As Doc Rowe shows up and says that Garnier's gonna be the first one to be taken off because they're still stabilizing Joe Toy, and he gets on the stretcher, and as he's passing by, he goes, "Hey Joe, I told you I'd beat you back to the States." Even then, he's got to be throwing a wisecrack out there, and that's just who he was. And to see these guys, these characters, these memorable faces, because in other times, oh, that guy got shot. Who is that guy? Oh, we knew him for 5 minutes. Okay, I guess that we can move on. But these are the guys that we've known. We've gotten to enjoy watching them for 7 episodes, and now they're gone. It's just heartbreaking.
Yeah, Garnier. You're bringing up moments now because I'm still 7 episodes in. I'm still having a hard time placing who the actor with the name of the face. First time watches, man, for shows are sometimes so brutal, especially such a heavy heavy show like this. But Garnier, it's a very good point. Like I totally forgot. We had a whole conversation about this guy who didn't get the Saving Private Ryan treatment. He didn't get back to the States because his brother died. He said, "No, I'm going out there. I'm jumping." and doing this thing. Oh, I forgot the Quaker line too, and having that little moments of Winters where he drinks his first little bit of alcohol. Winters does. Those are some good moments that we see with Garnier, and and he goes out a hero. Like he freaking went out. He ran and risked his life to save Joey Toy. Joe out there too. So give hats off to him for sure. Good call.
I do find it funny that that's like the one character you have to say his whole name. Like everyone else, it's a nickname or it's their last name, but then it's Joe Toy. You have to say the whole thing. Yeah. Okay, so the tragedy of this episode is a major theme. Another major theme in this episode is Dyke. Lieutenant Dyke.
Get this guy out of here.
I know. And how many conversations are had during this episode about how can we get rid of him? And I love the interaction Winters has with Nixon of like, Dyke is horrible. It's like, well, who would you replace him with? And they go through like the list of, well, here are the officers in Easy Company. You've got Shames, who just yells at it. He's the guy who says he's seen too many war movies. He just yells at everybody the whole time. Then you've got Peacock, who is completely confused. And we said he was an LVP a couple episodes ago because he was the guy who waited for the actual red smoke to come out, not for the sound of the canister to be released. And
I don't see the color.
No, nobody tries harder, but I can't even trust him running a platoon. I don't want to trust him with the whole company. And then you've got Buck, who's a great natural leader, but he's the only experienced officer that he can trust, and he's been different since he was hurt. And then you have Dyke, who I love, again, narrated by Lipton, and he has a great line in there where he says, Lieutenant Dyke is not a bad leader because he made bad decisions. He's a bad leader because he made no decisions. And he just was always absent. And I right after he says that, I paid real close attention to some of what he was saying in the few meetings he actually has. And the one thing he says is after that is, all right, I want you and you and you organize a team, make sure that we protect the officers' quarters. And it's like that's the only thing he's concerned about, is making sure he is safe. That is the job of his company, is to make sure he survives, and everything else is pointless. But yeah, so you've got these
same
officers.
thing we said before too. About him taking the medical supplies too. He wants to keep it for himself. Yeah,
he's only concerned about himself. Luckily, Winters finds a way to get rid of Peacock when Nixon gives up his 30-day furlough to go sell war bonds, and gives it to Peacock. And one of my favorite moments of this episode is the irony of when Peacock is saying bye, and all the guys are like, "Oh, this is such great news! I'm so glad you're leaving." It couldn't have happened to anybody. It couldn't have happened. This couldn't have happened to a better guy. This is such great news. Congratulations, Peacock. And he's just like, "Oh, guys, you care about me so much, man." They're like, "Oh, we don't have to follow him anymore. Hallelujah."
Yeah, thank goodness.
But yeah, Dyke, he's just weird and awkward. It's even mentioned here that he's a favorite of some higher up, and they sent him here to get some experience. And but he's, as Lipton eventually says, goes to Winters and says he's an empty uniform, and he's going to get a lot of people killed when they actually have to go into battle, and he actually has to lead people.
Yeah, that's true.
And there was that weird there's that weird interaction of him and Lipton, where he comes up to Lipton in his foxhole, and he just starts, "Sorry about Hoobler," and he actually acts like a human being for a little bit. Like, "Oh yeah. It's like, "Where are you from, Lipton?" "Oh, from West Virginia." I was like, "Oh, okay. What? Why are you a paratrooper?" He's like, "Oh, I saw this ad." And like, "Oh, so where are you from, Dyke?" And he's already walked away before he even finished hearing his answer to it. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Who are you? I mean, come on. It's just,
He's trying to kind of normal, but he's also shut off still. Like he won't like give up any information about himself. And is he really listening to you? Who knows? I doubt it.
Any great Dyke moments from this episode?
No, you pretty infamous.
Oh.
Yeah, we're infamous. No, it's Dyke, that moment where he's like walks away from the conversation. That's pretty much sums it up. Like trying to have a heart to heart, just get to know each other. Oh, he's already gone. Okay, cool. I'm talking to the wall. Good to know. Yeah, that's pretty much Dyke in a nutshell right there.
Or then his moment in the barrage. You handle things here. I'm gonna go for help.
Yeah, of course you are.
And then and Luz's reaction is, what the?
Wow,
just
what the?
Yeah. And then he does his impression later on. I'm gonna go for help. And Lipton being the leader, pulls him aside. It's like, two things. One, great impression. Two, don't do it anymore, because that's not helping anybody. Yeah. We're stuck with this guy. Mm-hmm. It doesn't help to get anybody else on the wrong side of him. Mm-hmm. And all this leads to the attack on Foy, where Lipton is concerned. All right, this is when he goes to Winners and says this is going to not go well. He has a very specific task because Easy Company is leading the assault. They have to get into town. They have covering fire behind them. They have to get in, get positioned so that everything else can happen. And Dyke blows it. He screws it all up. He freaks. He freezes. I mean, I told you back in episode 3, Blythe is not the worst soldier ever. It's Dyke, right? I mean, what did you see in this scene?
I just saw. I saw really. I was kind of frustrating because it's like, basically people have called it that this was going to happen. That once he has to do something, he's not going to do anything good. Like he's going to make a rational decision, and I'm glad that he's not there anymore. So it's a little, it's more than frustrating, but it's we kind of knew that was going to happen. So
well, everyone was waiting for it. Yeah, everyone was waiting for it. But and I think everyone has kind of had these moments before too. It's like, something bad is going to happen, but you have to wait for something bad to happen to stop the bad thing from happening.
Unfortunately, yes.
I know this isn't going to go bad, or this is going to go bad, but I have to actually wait for the person to make the mistake in order to fix it. Because until they actually make the mistake, we don't know for sure if that mistake is going to be made.
Good point.
And so the mistake is made. He freezes. He tries to send part of Easy Company on an end around to the backside of the city. He's screwing up everything. Winters is yelling at him. Winters almost runs out there and takes care of it himself until Colonel Sink yells at him and tells him, "You are running this battalion. You get back here." And then we get potentially the MVP moment of the entire show. And that is Winters having the thought, the gut reaction to turn around and say, "Spears, you are now in charge of Easy Company." And it's that moment that you go, yes, Spears, that's the guy. That's the guy we want doing this. And dude's a badass. I mean, there's no other way to describe it.
Hey, the thing between me and you is you have hope. That's why you're not doing anything. Just imagine there's no hope, and that's why you can get some stuff done. Yeah, basically, call back to his conversation with Blythe a little bit. Mm-hmm. Yeah, having Spears kind of take back over and be more of a focal point. I think that's MVP moment right there.
Yeah, and we saw him in that one tiny little moment earlier where he sees Christensen in the Foxhole.
Yeah,
aka Michael Fassbender, popping back up again.
Finally.
And they're talking about some of the legend of Spears, and he he totally knows that he has this legend around him, because then he offers each of them a smoke, which is just priceless. But when he gets picked, he goes just barreling through the field, dodging everything that's coming his way, and in like 10 seconds, he hears what's going on and undoes all of the mistakes Dyke made, and everything is fixed. Like, just like that. It's like, oh, no, don't do that. That's a waste of time. We need to do this, we need to do this, we need to do this, and go. Perfect.
And go.
And Lipton makes it all happen. And then, the craziest part, which again, you wouldn't believe it, except this actually happened. It's a true story. They lost sight of I Company on the backside of the city, who was supposed to be bringing up that side, and they needed to connect with them in order for this assault to work. So what does Spears do? He just gets up and he runs through the center of the city to the other side, connects with I Company, and then turns around and runs back through the center of the city. And nobody hits him. Nobody fires at him, because they all are like, what the hell is this guy doing?
Yeah.
And it worked. And I mean, he single-handedly, the way the story's told in the show, I don't know if this is like the full thing, but he single-handedly saved that assault on Foy.
It's crazy. He has good cardio. I gotta say that. He's got great cardio.
he jogged up Curry a few times, I think.
I think so, yeah.
But yeah, just that moment is like my favorite moment of the entire show. It is just that, what the hell? And all the tragedy, all the pain, all the heartache of earlier in the episode, like, is completely turned around on a 180 when you see what a real leader looks like once again as the CEO of Easy Company.
Yeah.
And you see this fearless guy do something absolutely insane, because that is what had to happen in that moment for it to work. And it made him like, winners wouldn't have done that.
No.
He's too smart for that. You needed someone who was stupid enough to make the crazy decision in order to survive that moment. And Spears was perfect for that moment. Yeah, my favorite part of the show, because it's just one of those moments. What? Just no. What?
You just got promoted. We don't want Dyke back. No.
Right. and I think that's why this is my favorite episode, because the highs and the lows that you go through in this episode, like that moment of being so excited, like, what? This is crazy, to before that you're like, what? This is crazy. Toy and Garnier and Hubler and Muck and Pinkala and all these guys are getting killed. But it all is like resurrected by Spears and what he's able to bring to them. And you finally have that competent leadership again.
Yeah, exactly. And I love the moment that Spears has with Lipton in the church with the girls choir, or whatever they're singing, and that was really, we see all the characters there again. They kind of slowly fade in and out with who's there, who's not. Because how many? He said he had over close to 200 people, right? Now it was down to 60 something
like that. I didn't.
There was a number.
Have the exact
number there. Yeah, but it was like seeing like they had so many people going in. Now they hardly have any, but having Spears say to Lipton, basically, like, there has been somebody who's been kind of the heart and soul, the backbone of this company, who's leading them without him knowing. And it's like, you have no idea who I'm talking. And it's like, he's talking about Lipton. We saw that from Karatan episode, where he was the first one to notice that stuff's about to go down. We need to get the heck out of here. He's telling everybody run away. He almost got his biscuits blown off. He even mentioned that in the thing in this episode, his niblets, I should say. I said biscuits, his niblets.
Yeah.
Almost blown off in that episode. And he has the scars. He's not rearranged downstairs. He'll let you know that for sure. But he's there being the heart and soul of this company. And Lipton just proves again, like, he is kind of the backbone and one of the better characters of leadership that the show does have. This company does have, actually.
How are your nuts doing, Lip? Doing fine. Thanks for asking.
They're doing fine. They're doing fine.
Yeah, and I mean, we've talked about how this show tends to have those perfect final scenes in each episode, and this is another
Great
one
scene.
uh,
Perfect
of
scene.
uh, of you the chaos of this whole episode of the barrage in the woods of all the carnage, all the characters we've known and loved dying to the craziness of Spears taking over for Dyke on the battlefield, and then you end in this church with this choir and this just peaceful, solemn, calm moment, and you have a Spears talking about why he enjoys the legend of Spears and why he thinks it's a good thing,
If you
and
want to address it,
yeah, he doesn't address it. And then you have you find out the news that Lipton is going to be promoted, and he's getting a battlefield commission, and he's going to go from Sergeant Lipton to Lieutenant Lipton, which is totally worth it and
yeah,
totally earned.
exactly. Great way to end the episode.
Absolutely. All
One of
right.
the better ones, yeah.
Any last thoughts on the breaking point before we move on?
No, I think I'm pretty good. Hopefully Lipton doesn't get sick.
Uh,
Oh wait. Oh no. Oh, spoiler for what might to come. Anyway, stay tuned.
yeah. So yeah, like I said, this is my favorite episode. And even watching it again now, I just love the ups and downs of this episode and everything that it brings, and just the action of this episode. Lipton narrates it, but it doesn't necessarily study Lipton that much. It's more of him
Yeah.
just observing everything that's going on because he's involved in everything that's going on.
Yeah,
So I
it's
think
his
that's
observation.
Really,
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, that is our episode on episode 7, The Breaking Point. We'll be back at you very soon with episode 8. Until then, enjoy.